Woke is a word used by the Black community to note that we must be aware of social injustices.
But words migrate.
Why is that a bad thing?
It's not a bad thing, and originally that was absolutely a great thing. Alert to injustices.
When BillMaher stepped onto The View, it wasn't just another TV segment, it was a full-blown collision. Known for his unfiltered takes and unapologetic style, Maher didn't hold back as he clashed with SunnyHostin and her fellow co-hosts. The topic: America's most divisive issues, Trump voters, wokeness, and accountability. This wasn't just another back and forth. It became a pivotal moment that exposed the deep divides in how the country talks about politics, identity, and culture. Armed with razor-sharp wit and brutal honesty, Maher turned the discussion into a verbal sparring match that shook the room and exploded across social media like wildfire. But it wasn't just his words that made waves, it was how he flipped the script, challenging ideas that often go unopposed in mainstream conversations. Suddenly, what could have been a routine midday debate turned into a cultural flashpoint, leaving viewers asking, how can one conversation dominate headlines and spark national debate for weeks? Let's break down how it all ignited, because the tension didn't come out of nowhere. It had been simmering, just waiting for the right spark to set it off.
That in the first segment you used the term woke, and you said that woke is what was sort of ruining everything, and I know that you're...
No, I didn't say ruining everything. I said that's why Trump could get reelected.
That's why Trump could get reelected. So the term woke has been, in my view, co-opted by the right and weaponized and bastardized, and so I was surprised to hear you use the term, because historically, as you know, because I think you're quite brilliant, that woke is a word used by the Black community to note that we must be aware of social injustices.
But words migrate.
Why is that?
The View is no stranger to heated arguments, but this particular episode felt like a powder keg with the fuse already lit. Enter BillMaher, a man famous for taking shots at both sides of the political spectrum. His mere presence raised eyebrows, but it was his sharp commentary that turned the entire segment into must-watch television. On the other side of the ring stood SunnyHostin, intelligent, bold, and fiercely progressive. She wasn't about to let Maher's provocative jabs slide. As he doubled down on criticisms of wokeness, accountability, and political division, Hostin met him blow for blow, passionately defending her values. Meanwhile, Joy Behar threw in her signature blunt and often controversial remarks, adding more fuel to the fire. Whoopi Goldberg tried to play referee, but even she couldn't rein in the chaos. The result? A storm of clashing opinions, rising tempers, and a panel that had audiences glued to their screens. Maher came in swinging with his signature blend of humor, brutal honesty, and razor-sharp critique. Hostin stood her ground, turning the discussion into an ideological battlefield. Terms like woke and accountability weren't just tossed around, they were dissected, challenged, and weaponized. It wasn't just a casual comment. It was Joy Behar's explosive comparison that took things from heated to nuclear. Behar didn't just drop a hot take, she lit a match when she compared MAGA hats to swastikas. The room practically froze as the weight of her statement sank in. It wasn't just provocative, it was incendiary, sparking outrage across the political spectrum. Critics pounced, accusing Behar of trivializing Nazi atrocities and unfairly demonizing millions of Americans. In that moment, what started as a tense panel debate erupted into a full-blown cultural firestorm, one that would dominate headlines and stir fierce debate long after the cameras stopped rolling.
It's just astounding to me that they can't tell the good guys from the bad guys. I mean, just morally. I mean, let me tell you, if you're for Hamas, just live in Gaza for a day. And I'm not talking about while the war is on. I mean, before the war. Trust me, you would go running and screaming and begging to live in Tel Aviv, a place that has you.
He ripped into the comparison, calling it reckless and counterproductive. Maher argued that making such sweeping, inflammatory claims doesn't change minds, it hardens hearts and pushes people further apart. His stance was crystal clear: if the goal is to persuade, not alienate, then this kind of rhetoric is a dead end. But SunnyHostin wasn't letting Behar face the heat alone. She doubled down, insisting that holding Trump supporters accountable for their actions wasn't just necessary, it was non-negotiable. Maher didn't flinch. Instead, he flipped the narrative, pointing out that painting millions of Americans with a broad brush only deepens division and shuts down any hope of real conversation. The tension in the studio was palpable. Even the audience didn't know how to react. Some gasped, others applauded, while many sat in stunned silence. Because this wasn't just about Trump or MAGA hats anymore. It was a much deeper debate about how America navigates its ever-widening political and cultural divides. Could this fiery exchange lead to meaningful dialogue? Or were they just widening the chasm that already split the nation in two? And just when it seemed like things couldn't escalate further, the word woke hit the conversation like a wrecking ball. Suddenly, the debate exploded into overdrive, and the room braced for impact.
That the left hasn't changed. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when it was the conservatives who hated the Jews.
Yeah.
Okay? That was a joke. But,
Too dark.
Well, maybe it is, but it's true. I mean, you know, if I had any doubt that I was right about the change that's happened in the left, watching people protest for a terrorist organization like Hamas, that straightened me.
Hostin passionately defended the original meaning of woke, explaining that it once symbolized awareness of racial and social injustices, especially within black communities. But Maher wasn't about to let her tie it up so neatly. He hit back, arguing that words evolve, and woke had transformed into something else entirely. To him, it had become a symbol of divisive, performative activism that alienates the average American. Maher's message was clear. What once stood for awareness had turned into a tool that pushed people away rather than bringing them in. And he didn't stop there. Maher pointed to real-world consequences, citing controversial policies like defunding the police and cancel culture. He argued that while these ideas might energize progressive circles, they were driving voters straight into the arms of the right. Hostin pushed back hard. Raising awareness of injustice, she argued, is never a bad thing. Maher agreed in theory, but warned that the left's obsession with purity tests and hyperfixation on language was becoming a political weapon handed directly to Trump and his base. The tension in the room thickened, the debate cutting deeper as they dove straight into the heart of the matter. Trump voters. The conversation detonated when Joy Behar declared that Trump supporters should be held accountable for his actions, branding their loyalty as a moral failure. The room froze for a beat, but Maher wasted no time clapping back. He challenged the idea that millions of Americans could be reduced to a single stereotype. Maher argued that many Trump voters weren't driven by hatred or bigotry, but by economic struggles, disillusionment with politics, and a sense of alienation from progressive elites. Painting them as villains, he warned, wouldn't change minds, it would only deepen divisions. Hostin stood her ground, fiercely defending Behar's claim that accountability was essential. The room crackled with energy as the panel wrestled with the question, was holding Trump voters accountable a necessary reckoning, or was it a self-destructive path that pushed reconciliation even further out of reach?
This is a show watched by a lot of women. Women have no rights in this place, and a lot of majority Muslim countries around the world. There's no equal rights as far as speech, dress, opportunities for education, reproductive rights, freedom from sexual violence, freedom from sexual harassment.
The LGBTQ community. Yes.
That too. But you throw around the term apartheid. There is a gender apartheid in a lot of the world, where women are second-class citizens.
But then, Sarah Haynes entered the conversation with a calmer, more measured take. She suggested that instead of outright condemnation, the left should focus on understanding why people support Trump in the first place. She hinted that connection, not criticism, might be the key to shifting perspectives. Yet, Maher wasn't done making waves. His pointed critique of the left's failure to connect with ordinary Americans made it clear this wasn't just about Trump. It was about something bigger, how to fix a country tearing at the seams. And just when it seemed the debate couldn't get any more intense, the conversation swerved into an even more heated topic, the Israel-Hamas conflict. Maher's stance was blunt and unapologetic. He didn't sugarcoat his criticism of certain protests, accusing them of appearing to support Hamas, a group designated as a terrorist organization by the US, the EU, and several other countries. He framed the conflict as an existential battle, arguing that Hamas's aggression left Israel with no choice but to defend itself. His words triggered a firestorm of reactions. Some applauded his honesty, praising him for defending Israel's right to safety. Others criticized him for oversimplifying a complex, deeply rooted conflict with immense humanitarian consequences. Hostin responded with an emotional plea, emphasizing the severe human cost of war and the suffering of civilians on both sides. She highlighted the moral gray zones often ignored in polarized debates, reminding viewers that behind political arguments are real people enduring unimaginable pain. By the time the segment wrapped, one thing was clear: this wasn't just about Israel or Gaza. It was about confronting the messy, uncomfortable truths that come with global conflicts and reckoning with the limits of ideological certainty in the face of human suffering.
Yeah.
You do?
Yes.
So how
Okay,
can
well,
we get out with a ceasefire?
All right, so Hamas needs to be destroyed because they are a terrorist organization who say openly that they want to commit genocide on the Jewish people, on the state of Israel. That's what from the river to the sea means, okay? And they say it very openly. They say, we did this attack. They've attacked Israel 5 times. They've started 5 wars since they were given that land back. They could have chosen to turn that place into any place they wanted to, and they took a lot of money that they took from the international community, and they spent it on bombs and guns and building tunnels. So if they need to be destroyed, how do we do that? It's a war. I don't know how to do that, and you don't know how to do that. I assume the Israeli... Of course, everybody is, but that's what happens in a war. Here's a way to stop that. Stop attacking...
But Maher wasn't done shaking things up. Shifting from international affairs to domestic battles, he zeroed in on what he called America's mean girls culture. His main gripe: cancel culture. What started as a push for accountability, he argued, had spiraled into a tool for silencing dissent, punishing anyone who dared to say the wrong thing. Maher warned that the left's obsession with ideological purity wasn't just alienating moderates, it was handing Trump supporters ammunition to strengthen their most powerful narratives. He pointed to polarizing policies like defunding the police and extreme language policing as prime examples of how well-intentioned progressive ideas were backfiring. What may feel righteous in activist circles, Maher argued, often comes across as disconnected from the struggles of everyday Americans. And the consequences were dire. These policies weren't just controversial. They had become political weapons used to attack the very movements fighting for change. But Maher's critique didn't stop at politics. It was a scathing review of society as a whole. He argued that the growing inability to have open, honest conversations without fear of backlash was paralyzing progress. Instead of fostering understanding, the culture of silencing opposing views was deepening divides and shutting down opportunities for real change. Maher made a passionate call for more speech, not less. He insisted that uncomfortable conversations and genuine debate were essential to bridging differences, and that only through fearless dialogue could the country hope to heal its fractures.
That I thought we kind of came up with because people were calling them bums and vagrants and hobos.
Yeah, now that's
Homeless. No.
It's unhoused.
Well, it's people experiencing homelessness. But they're experiencing it on the street.
Yeah.
Okay, the liberal view of that was for compassion's sake. We're the liberals. For compassion, let's get these people off the street. That's not the view of the, whatever word we're going to come up with for this. Their view of the homeless is they're an endangered species that needs to be protected in their natural habitat. Living their best.
Without that dialogue, Maher warned, the cultural divide would only keep growing. The fallout from his appearance on The View was swift and intense, igniting online debates, media coverage, and fiery discussions across political lines. Whether people agreed with him or not, one thing was clear: Maher had just added more fuel to an already raging cultural inferno. Inside the studio, the reactions said it all. Maher's critiques didn't just draw polite nods, they sparked actual applause from an audience not always aligned with The View's usual tone. Even SunnyHostin and BillMaher, known for standing their ground, seemed visibly shaken. BillMaher shot back with an indignant "How dare you?" But the energy in the room made it obvious. Maher's words had landed, and the tension wasn't fading anytime soon. Then came the social media explosion. Maher's words set off a digital firestorm as supporters praised him for saying what many felt others were too afraid to voice publicly. Meanwhile, critics accused him of oversimplifying complex issues and handing conservatives fresh ammunition to attack the left. The divide was undeniable. Maher's message to progressives was blunt: stop alienating voters with rigid ideological purity and performative activism. Instead, he urged the left to reconnect with the issues that matter to everyday Americans. The current path, he warned, wasn't inspiring hope or change, it was driving more people into Trump's camp. Yet Maher wasn't just there to criticize. His message carried a deeper call to action. He wasn't asking the left to abandon their values but to shift their focus from divisive rhetoric to meaningful conversations. Real change, he argued, comes from understanding, not demonization. The mean girls culture of punishing people for missteps, rather than engaging them in dialogue, was crippling progress. To Maher, the path forward wasn't about silencing dissent but creating space for honest, sometimes uncomfortable discussions, before the divides become irreversible. His fiery exchange on The View wasn't just about clashing with co-hosts or throwing shade at Trump voters. It was a challenge to rethink how the nation approaches conversations about politics, culture, and identity. The time for shutting people down or labeling them as enemies is over, Maher warned. Canceling, shaming, and dismissing differing opinions isn't just toxic, it's counterproductive. If progressives want to win elections, change minds, and move the country forward, they need to let go of the outrage cycle and focus on real-world solutions that resonate beyond their own echo chambers. Maher's message wasn't just a critique, it was a plea to break free from the endless cycle of blame and division. Whether the left takes his advice or continues down their current path remains to be seen. But one thing is certain, America's cultural divide isn't closing anytime soon without honest, constructive conversations, and a willingness to listen, even when it hurts. What do you think? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next.